we'll call this meeting to order. If everyone could just stand and recite the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Shirley, have you had the opportunity to call the roll?
I have taken roll. Everybody is present. Doyle, and you do have a quorum.
Thank you. The first item on the agenda then is the consent agenda, which consists of the approval of the minutes from June 12th. Have we had any commission discussion?
Move for approval.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
The consent agenda passes. The next item on the agenda then is new business code amendment, backyard chickens, hens, and we're having a public hearing. David, do you want to give us a report?
Yep, sure. Thanks for being accommodating, holding the meeting tonight rather than last week at our normal time. It's really appreciated. We had a good time out of town last week. So tonight we have on new business a code amendment for backyard chickens or hens. It is a public hearing. It's a zoning change. Although it's a code amendment, the board, they're the ones that maybe approve codes and code changes because this would be proposed inside of the zoning ordinance. That's kind of the realm of the Planning and Zoning Commission, so that's why this is brought to you today. The topic comes up periodically. We get inquiries from individuals about having backyard chickens about once or maybe twice a year. We follow up on people who have chickens as a nuisance violation, and we request that those be removed. Even in the past, we've had to deal with a goat and a cow, and there was a mini horse years ago also. Some on the board might remember about 2010, 13 years ago, we had a Planning Zoning Commission member raise the topic too and recommend that we look at an ordinance for backyard chickens. It didn't go anywhere at that point in time. That's 13 years ago though, so that's partly why it's brought back before you today. To the Board of Aldermen has had some inquiries. They've asked something be put together for consideration, so that's why we're here today. The way staff has interpreted the issue in the past is poultry, chickens are considered livestock as defined by the state. And because livestock isn't allowed as a permitted use in our residential neighborhoods, that's where it becomes a nuisance code violation. And so we've been able to have chickens removed because of that. The zoning ordinance lists things that you can do, not if it's absent. That's what I'm trying to say. It tells you the things that you can do on the property by the zoning. If it's absent, it doesn't mean that you can do. If it's absent, you're allowed if it is present in the zoning ordinance. So we drafted some language that would allow residential chickens in our subdivisions. In the staff report, I kind of summarized the key points. The proposed language includes half-acre lots or larger. Where that gets you is lots on Paddock Drive are about 3 acres. Mirabella, 19th Street, they've got some larger lots there. In our standard subdivisions, half an acre gets you in some of the cul-de-sacs where the backyards might be really big. So there are some neighborhoods where there are larger lots there. Not a lot of opportunity for chickens to be in town. If people thought it made sense for it to be a little more open, for more people to have chickens, then we'd want to reduce that lot size, or could even increase it. Maybe it does need to be on a more rural lot, acre, 3 acres, something like that, to be a little more restricted. The proposal also includes up to 3 female chickens. So hens only, not guineas, not peacocks, not roosters, not those other types of fowl that might be loud and noisy. Coops with enclosed outdoor run areas must be located in the rear yard, so not the front yard, and at least 20 feet from any property line. Chickens must be kept within their enclosures at all times, so the coop and a run together must be enclosed. So a door of some sort or a gate that they can lock and when the human isn't out there with the chickens. All feed and other items associated with the keeping of chickens shall be kept clean and sanitary at all times, because we don't want to create nuisance conditions with smell or, whatever, vermin, smell, things like that. Chickens shall not be raised for the purpose of slaughter or commercial use, such as selling of eggs or meat. So we're not creating a commercial enterprise on the property. The idea is you have the chickens for the eggs that you eat yourself. Many subdivisions in the city, we want to point out, also have requirements that you can't have chickens or livestock on the property. So there's some covenants or restrictions that would apply. We don't enforce those. It would be up to those owners associations or neighbors to then enforce that. Right now, since we don't allow chickens, we handle it like a nuisance complaint. I list some benefits of backyard chickens too. Cheaper eggs because you've got them yourself. Insect control, but if they're locked in their coop, that's kind of limited in that sense. Food waste reduction was one I saw too, because food scraps, they can eat some food scraps too. What are the issues? Noise, dogs barking, or you get the foxes or other animals that might want to hunt them because they're out in the yard areas. Public notices were posted in the Courier Tribune on July 13th and July 27th. The reason for the gap there that's not consecutive is because the Board of Aldermen meeting would be August 7th for this. That's their next meeting, so we have to time those public notices close to those meetings. Planning and Zoning Commission can forward the Board of Aldermen a recommendation to approve as written or propose some modifications. Again, this is just a starting point. It's an idea. If the board feels some modifications to the proposal are appropriate, there's no problem with proposing something a little different, or recommend that it not be approved and we continue on as we have for the last many years. Again, the Board of Aldermen will consider this or the P&Z recommendation at their August 7th meeting. Now, attached, I just kind of gave you a summary of maybe what the setbacks were and how many chickens and what kinds of chickens. There's some other code sections in there. So we'd have a permit. We'd require a permit with a fee. We don't know what that fee is. The board would determine what that fee is. That way we can monitor it. It would be something the animal control person would look at. And we think that having a permit would be appropriate so that we know where those locations are at and we can follow up with them when we need to. A permit would be good for a year, so they have to renew it each year also. And if there's an issue during that year, then those permits can be pulled or not renewed.
Okay, thank you. Well, this is a public hearing, so we'll go ahead and open the public hearing. There's no one in the building tonight. Is there anybody online? I can't see the...
No, just Ryan is with us today.
Okay. Well, in that case, we will close the public hearing and open it up for commission discussion.
Main thing I would want something in here that's telling me what kind of pen it's in. Is it like this picture we see here where it's just a wire fence? Is it gonna be, I'd like to see, if somebody put one in my house next door to me, I'd wanna see some kind of a privacy fence where I'm not seeing it every day looking out my back door. By this picture here that Mr. Parks, and of course this is out in the country, but I wouldn't wanna look at that from my backyard.
Well, there's a house directly across the street from that.
Yeah. If there was some kind of a 6 foot privacy fence around it, something like that, maybe I could see that, but I wouldn't want to look at this out my door every
Do you
day.
mean immediately surrounding it as
Yeah.
opposed to maybe a privacy fence around the
Some kind of a
exterior
privacy
yard?
fence that covers the, what do you call it, the run?
Mm-hmm.
So I didn't have to see it.
So if, just so for clarification, so if the person had a privacy fence around their entire yard, you would still want them to put another privacy
Oh,
fence?
no, there's a lot of yards that don't have a privacy
Right,
fence.
no, I understand that. That's why I'm just trying to
Yeah,
to
no,
clarify.
I understand what you're asking. No, I probably wouldn't have a problem with it if their yard already had a privacy fence up around it.
Yeah, I think that's a good point.
Yeah, I didn't think about that. But, you know, my deck on the back of my house sits up high, I'm gonna see over a privacy fence. But I can understand if their backyard's already got a 6-foot privacy fence around it, that would probably be all right.
Anything else?
So I'd like to see something in here that clarifies what their run is and how it's fenced and,
Like what? Okay.
If it's shielded from the neighbor's view or something like that, so that it
Yeah,
can
Are you thinking
consider.
maybe like some design criteria for the coop and run itself?
yeah, and I'd like to see that come back to us for us to be able to approve what kind of, I mean, you don't want to see sheet metal
Right?
across using as a fence.
And I even hate to make a suggestion because I'm just not in favor of this, but the size needs to be regulated too, I believe.
yeah, I would be curious what what is the right size for 3 hens, and then it should be definitely maxed out at the size for 3 hens, if that's the limit.
Yeah, I did some search on that. It's not a huge area that they proposed.
Yeah, I would assume it's not for.
Now, the way I kind of posed this was 20-foot setback on all sides.
It requires a
So
very big yard.
the standard lot is 75 feet wide. And so if you take off 20 feet on one side, 20 feet off of the other side, that leaves 45 feet. The backyard needs not be more than 30 feet deep. So assuming it was a 30-foot deep yard, you'd be 10 feet from 20 feet from the rear yard, so that leaves you 10 feet. So it's going to push it up against the house, essentially, is what it is. And the reasoning behind that is, if they're your chickens, they should be closer to your house rather than set up against let's say the property line where they're up against, the neighbors, up against the neighbors.
So I'm probably in an odd camp, because I don't have an issue with people having chickens, as long as there's restrictions to them. 3 chickens, probably not enough chickens to fulfill the needs of a family of 4, for the most part, because you're probably gonna maybe get an egg every day. So and in comparing what's here to the cities that have regulations that allow chickens, we're basically saying you can have chickens, but you can't have chickens with this regulation. So even though I'm for it, I'm going to vote against it, because once it becomes an ordinance, it's darn near impossible to change. So most of our surrounding towns that allow chickens allow up to 6. They have no property restriction size. They have requirements that it's a certain distance, and it varies from city to city, from neighboring structures that they don't own. They also, and I don't have a huge issue with this, but they also don't require that they maintain or are kept within the coop. So they can free range their backyard if it's fenced, which helps with that whole insect reduction thing, cuts down on the cost of food, so on and so forth. But as it's written, I'm against it. Most of them allow 6 chickens. If you get over 2/3 of an acre, they'll let you have 10. But there's that. That's where I stand.
So I'm actually not anti-city chicken either, but my concern is, do we really have the staff and ability to enforce codes and regulate this? Because I feel like I see code regulation broken all the time, and it doesn't seem like anything. I mean, do we have the staff to make sure that people, because some people are going to put this in even though, and not get their permit, right? That's just how it works, right? People are just going to do it. It's America, they want to do what they want. Do we have the ability to and the manpower and to cover the cost of making sure people are complying and doing what they're supposed to do?
I would say they're already doing it. There's a lot of chicken coops in this town. There's a lot. In fact, there was a guy that lived over in Regency that had chickens, turkeys, and ducks, and roosters. And that was, I don't know, that was 8 years ago. I know where there's a couple of chicken coops right now. I'm not mentioning where because I tend to get free eggs, but. And I might be taking care of them this weekend. But it's happening all over this town. You get on any of the Facebook forums and they bring up chickens, you're gonna see 5 or 10 people that go, oh yeah, I got chickens. They're here. And we should enforce them. But if you do this, you're still gonna be going after the same people that have the chickens, with the exception of a couple.
Okay, so a couple things. And I've already said some before some of you got here before. I'm the only one that's been here since there was 3 digits on the sign of the population here. Nobody had chickens in Kearney when it was a rural town and nobody cared. If you wanted chickens, you lived in the country. I know this is a big fad thing because we've actually built chicken coops for people at the store. We build these little barns where we can build these little chicken coops too. So I know it's a big fad thing, especially after the COVID deal. But people don't realize once they get into these chickens what they've got with the predators and just keeping them alive when it gets cold. And so you have a lot of people that are going to jump into this probably and then go, oh man, why did I do this? Backyard's all messed up. Third, this kind of reminds me of a problem that we're chasing that really wasn't a problem. And that brings me back to the sign that we allowed to happen to the guy that was trying to put in the hardware store out here where the fitness thing is, where John Super used to be. And we all said no. I wasn't in on that. I was in the back room, but the zoning board all said no. It was a 0 to 0-4, and all the rest of you were against. And then the Board of Aldermen allowed it. And then, of course, that guy crapped out the next month. And we had just told Quick Trip, no, you can't have that. So this is, I don't know why we're even trying to allow this. Do you want a first-class city here, or do you not want that? That's just the way I look at it. So.
Well, I don't personally want chickens, but I don't have a problem with having chickens under the right conditions. I said this in the Board of Aldermen meeting, and I still believe it. It's not our job, I don't think, to tell people that they're not going to like to have chickens. They have to decide that for themselves.
Yeah, I agree.
But I sort of lean to the idea that a half an acre does send the message, well, you can have chickens, but you can't really have chickens. And so I don't like that so much. But I do like setbacks, and maybe that's how you control that, is by 20, 25 feet from any structure that you don't own. I don't know, and I don't know that we're gonna, my feeling here after listening to you all is that there's probably more work that we need to do before we send this to the board, because it sounds like we're kind of still struggling with.
I'm not.
That's fair. That is fair.
I just look at it that every house on my street is over half an acre. But there's nobody on my street that wants to look at a chicken coop and a chicken run in their neighbor's backyard. And I understand people want some things, but you got to take into account that they've got neighbors on two sides of them, or three sides of them. And, nobody said a word to me. I've read some things on Facebook, but those are the same people over and over too. So I don't want it next to me, so that I just can't be in favor of it.
Well, I would like to move to deny this recommendation, or any part of it. I don't even know how to word that. How about just no?
Or it would be for the recommendation of the Board of Aldermen that this ordinance,
I would recommend
or an
against,
ordinance related to this not be approved.
recommend against this ordinance, and when you forward it to the alderman. How about that? How's that sound, Shirley? You get that figured out?
I'll second that.
Okay, I have a motion and a second to not amend the zoning order to allow backyard chickens. Do we have any discussion? Okay.
Well, I think it should come back to us again with some, like the fencing that's gonna be around it and things into that nature, and the discussion of how many chickens before it ever goes to the Board of Aldermen. I want more information before I was to vote yes or no on it.
Okay, is that a second?
It's
Well, there was a
second.
motion and a second.
Okay, but is that a second motion?
No, you can't have a second motion. There's one on the floor. You gotta vote on it.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, then let's vote on that motion.
I just added that because you said any other discussion, so I wanted to point that out.
Okay.
That's how I feel.
Okay. All right, so all those in favor of not to recommend this to the board, vote yes. Right?
Aye.
Opposed?
Can we get raised hands?
Yeah.
Okay.
That we are not recommending it.
As is.
As the motion was made.
As is, yeah.
As the motion was made.
Okay. So then are you asking staff then to look at it again before we send it to the board?
That's what I would like to see.
Does that make any difference?
We can't do that?
Well, the motion was
Not to recommend this as
backyard
written.
chickens not be, an ordinance not to be approved. So I would say a yes vote means no ordinance, the recommendation would be not to pass any ordinance for
That's
backyard
correct.
chickens.
Right.
Not just as is right now.
See, because I was voting, I'm sorry,
Yeah.
for everybody who's watching this painfully,
Yeah.
I'm sorry, but I was voting for not to pass it as it is.
Same. So should we re-vote?
I think that's how I feel.
Maybe you guys could make a whole different motion to consider after it goes to the Board of Aldermen and whatever their decision is, for you guys to look at this issue again. Because I think it has to go to the Board of Aldermen because.
Yeah, there would still be a recommendation.
Yeah.
Because the board is the only one that
Can decide.
can decide.
But maybe you guys can make a second motion if you wanted to continue looking at it for it to be brought to a future planning commission meeting. And if they ended up approving, let's say the Board of Aldermen approved, you guys could still talk about asking
Amending
them
it.
to make changes.
I would like to make a motion that if the Board of Aldermen chooses to, I would just like to make a motion that we discuss this further in the future, and that if the Board of Aldermen chooses to approve it, that it comes back to us to really work out the scope of how it fits into the planning and zoning and codes. So something like that.
I'm kind of lost on the previous motion and what the vote was.
The vote was to send a denial.
It was denied from this board.
Of the ordinance as
Mhm.
presented
We didn't
to the
approve
Board
it.
of Aldermen.
And I think
That
there were
was
some of
unanimous.
us that, and I can talk about this at the Board of Aldermen meeting, but I feel like that some of us were voting not to send this particular iteration to the board, not that we were denying the idea of chickens at all, but just this particular iteration. Am I interpreting that correctly?
That's, yeah.
Yes,
Okay.
that was my
I
vote
agree
too,
with that.
yeah.
Okay.
Next
So,
motion. You agreeing with that?
Well, I think we already voted on my motion, didn't we?
We did, we
Or
did.
We did,
or
but we thought that, yeah,
sending
we
all
thought
those
a
votes and
yes
starting
vote was
over again now?
different.
Yeah, no, that was, no, his vote is, or his motion is what his motion is. I think we just interpreted it, the statement, and
Differently,
we should have voted no if that's how we felt,
yeah.
versus voting yes because we didn't want to send this one. So
Okay.
we passed the motion. I know this is very confusing. We passed the motion. We will send that to the board because we've already made that decision. And we may discuss this further. And I'll share with the board. They usually ask me about our decisions, and I can share that with the board.
Let's put it on the ballot with the dog thing.
I don't know that we're putting a dog on the ballot, but
Might as well. I mean, while you're going to the expense of having a vote, you might as well vote on chickens as well as dogs.
Got it.
I do, I mean, don't want to put it on a ballot, but it would be, I mean, it would be nice to know how other people felt. I mean, besides us, and I don't want it I wouldn't want it in my neighbor's backyard. Maybe if I thought they'd really take care of it, but I don't trust, my concern is people won't actually take care of it, and how will we then enforce codes?
Well, yeah. And my mind is protecting myself.
Well,
A chicken coop next to me, I would guess would probably cost me $25,000 if I sold my house.
yeah.
You know, I mean, it's just common sense.
You know, a lot of the covenants and restrictions within the subdivision would not allow this, but in your case, that one has not been active since Don sold the last lot.
I know it.
And so there isn't any structure there for you because, you know, there was no vinyl siding. As far as I know, you still can't have vinyl siding and everybody down there has to have a wood cedar shake roof.
Yeah.
And that's still in the covenant restrictions, and that's never been thrown out.
Yeah.
So, you know, somebody that was a real racer that wanted to, you know, push the deal on the covenants and restrictions, well, you haven't enforced them for 30 years, why are you doing it now? So that's what I'm saying. I mean, we have to.
Well, that's what's happened in this picture too.
Yeah.
It's in there, but it's.
I mean, both my grandparents were farmers. I've been around chicken coops. I don't know about the rest of you. There isn't anything good about them, in my opinion. You know.
okay, well, we'll move on from chickens and since we've already made the vote. There's no old business, so is there anything for discussion this evening?
But this Washington Street walkway, or whatever it's called, do we know when that's gonna be done being fixed, or?
We do have a building permit that's been submitted, and there's a demolition contract to finish removing the wall, but I don't know when
I
they're
can't
gonna
remember
start.
if it was at the beginning of August or the end of
I
August.
think you told me, yes, the end of August.
It is
curious.
moving, yeah, it's moving, it's off,
Okay.
yeah.
That whole wall had to come down.
There's an outside wall, and that'll have to come down. It'll be a skillful demolition job.
Down.
Yeah.
They're not tearing the whole building down? Gonna put a new wall up? Oh,
Quite a-
Yeah, and then demolition will do the work. They are the same company that removed the water tower for us. And they did some good work on the removal of a building for Excelsior Springs. I think it was, I don't know if it was one of the old schools or another building up there, but they do pretty good work.
Anything else?
Move for adjournment.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Have a great evening.
Okay.